Maria and welcome to SC Global News. From the vandalization of 100-year-old statue of Virgin Mary and Infant Jesus outside St. Teresa's Church in Breeder Cliff Manor, New York, to the disqualification of female fencer for refusing to compete against transgender opponent, we have many stories to cover. Another act of violent vandalism has occurred in New York following the incident at St. Patrick's Catholic Church in Wichita, Kansas. On the night of March 22, a 100-year-old statue of Virgin Mary and baby Jesus outside St. Teresa's Church in Breeder Cliff Manor, New York, was targeted. The statue was covered in a dark tar-like substance and one of its hands was broken during the attack. A 100-year-old statue of Virgin Mary and the Christ Child outside St. Teresa's Church in Briarcliff Manor, New York, was vandalized on the night of March 22. According to a report by News 12 Westchester, a dark tar-like substance was poured over the statue and the hand was broken during the attack. A special restoration team brought in the following day was able to remove some of the substance from the statue. Father Paul Waddell, pastor of the church, said that the incident filled him with great sadness and the community was praying for the conversion of the person or the people behind the desecration. The police are investigating but have not gotten any leads so far. Restoration is underway and parishioners place flowers before the statue, showing their love and respect for Virgin Mary. The statue, built in Italy, is nearly 100 years old and was installed by the first pastor of St. Teresa's Church. The church has been serving the local Catholic community since 1926. The incident is the latest among the anti-Catholic acts reported across the United States. In recent years, dozens of churches have faced acts of vandalism and desecration. On March 14th, St. Patrick's Catholic Church in Wichita, Kansas was burglared and vandalized. Wichita police and FBI identified and captured the 23-year-old suspect the following day. Donald Trump announces sweeping new tariffs on all goods entering the United States. The new tariffs will impose higher rates on goods from approximately 60 trade partners, which includes major economic players such as the European Union and China, who Trump has accused of engaging in unfair trade practices. The US will start imposing a 10% tariff on all imports beginning April 5th, with increased tariffs on specific countries set to take effect on April 9th. US President Donald Trump has unveiled a series of new import taxes on all goods entering the United States. This move aligns with his proposal from the previous year's White House campaign, setting a baseline tariff of 10% on all imports. The new tariffs will impose higher rates on goods from approximately 60 trade partners, which the White House has labeled as worst offenders. These nations include major economic players such as the European Union and China, who Trump has accused of engaging in unfair trade practices. As part of the announcement, Trump emphasized that the US was being taken advantage of by other countries imposing high tariffs and trade barriers. To counter this, the US will begin imposing a 10% tariff on all imports starting April 5th, with heightened tariffs on certain countries taking effect on April 9th. Among the new measures, China will face an additional 34% tariff on top of an existing 20% levy, bringing the total duty on Chinese goods to at least 54%. Japan and India will also see significant tariff increases with rates set at 24% and 26% respectively, and the European Union will face a 20% tariff increase. One of the most striking aspects of these new tariffs is the impact on countries that have attracted a surge of investment in the recent years. Following previous tariffs on China, many companies shifted their supply chains to other nations. As a result, goods from Vietnam and Cambodia will face some of the highest duties, with tariffs set at 46% and 49% respectively. Trump has defended these measures as reciprocal retaliation against countries with trade policies that he believes contribute to the US's high trade imbalances. These policies include high tariffs, value-added tax, and regulations that restrict certain goods such as food products containing specific chemicals. Additionally, Trump confirmed that 25% tax on all foreign-made cars announced the previous week will go into effect at midnight. The UK Crime and Policing Bill is drawing criticism from a Catholic academic who warns it could undermine the sacramental seal of confession. David Patton described the bill as a serious threat to both the seal of confession and religious freedom for Catholics. Patton, who provided written evidence to Parliamentary Committee reviewing the bill on March 31st, highlighted concerns over two specific clauses that he believes infringe on the confidentiality of confession. David Patton, a Catholic academic at Nottingham University Business School, has raised concerns about the potential impact of the new UK Crime and Policing Bill on the sacramental seal of confession. In an interview with The Pillar, Patton outlined how two key clauses in the bill could negatively affect the practice of confession. The first clause in question is Clause 45, which establishes a duty for adults in certain roles to report suspected child abuse to authorities when informed by either a victim or a perpetrator. Patton's letter to the Parliamentary Committee highlights that this clause could severely limit both perpetrators' and advisors' religious freedoms. According to Patton, the bill could discourage a perpetrator from seeking spiritual guidance and create a conflict of conscience for religious advisors who may be torn between their legal obligations and their spiritual duties after hearing a confession. The government is satisfied that any such interference is justified and that confessions made in the course of seeking religious or spiritual guidance do not enjoy absolute protection under the European Convention of Human Rights, which applies to the UK. The social need to combat child sexual abuse is strong, and that is proportionate to apply the duty to confessions made in a religious or spiritual context. Patton suggests that Clause 45 should be amended to exempt confessions made during religious sacraments from the mandatory reporting requirement. This change would allow priests to maintain the confidentiality of confessions without the fear of legal challenges. The second concern raised by Patton relates to Clause 52, which introduces a new criminal offense for anyone attempting to prevent or deter someone from fulfilling the duty to report suspected child abuse. This could potentially place Catholic bishops and other religious authorities at risk of criminal prosecution if they seek to enforce the seal of confession and prevent priests from reporting abuse. Catholics have previously raised concerns about the last-minute amendment to the 2023-2024 Criminal Justice Bill. However, the bill's progress was interrupted by the UK general election in July 2024. After the Labour Party's significant victory, the newly elected government introduced the Crime and Policing Bill in February 2025. At just 25 years old, Deacon B.J. Leonard Perry is set to become the youngest Catholic priest in Australia when he is ordained later this year for the Diocese of Toowoomba. Raised in a devout Catholic family, his faith deepened over the years, leading him to embrace the priesthood after the period of discernment. Amid Australia's ongoing priest shortage and declining mass attendance, his vocation stands as a beacon of hope for the church.
Deacon B.J. Leonard Perrott is set to be ordained a Catholic priest for the Diocese of Toowoomba, Australia later this year. At just 25 years old, he will be the youngest Catholic priest in the country. Born in Brisbane to Linda and Clint Perrott, Deacon Perrott, affectionately known as BJ, grew up in a devout Catholic family alongside his 4 siblings, including his twin sister Eve. The Perrott stood in contrast to the prevailing societal norms in Australia, where the average family size has remained just over 2.5 for more than a decade. Their faith was deeply ingrained in daily life, with regular mass attendance, morning and evening prayers, and frequent Marian cenacles held in their home. Deacon Perrott has fond memories of his childhood church in Blackwater, central Queensland, where he lived until he was about 10 years old. However, he also recalls the many Sundays without Holy Mass, as Blackwater was one of the many Australian parishes without a resident priest. Despite this, he witnessed a strong faith community dedicated to living an authentic Christian life. At age 10, the Perrott family relocated to Stanthorpe, where BJ's faith deepened. As he grew closer to Christ, he began sensing a calling to the priesthood. By the time he finished secondary school, this desire had firmly taken root. However, before entering seminary, he took a year off in 2017 to work on a broccolini farm, a time of discernment in which he underwent an intellectual conversion. This period also strengthened his appreciation for the church's liturgy and the beauty of Christian life. With renewed conviction, BJ entered the Holy Spirit Seminary in Queensland. Now in the final stage of his priestly formation, Deacon Perrott is completing his pastoral internship at Our Lady of Lourdes Parish in Toowoomba. Speaking to Australian news outlet 9 Now, he shared that while he had once envisioned having a family, spouse and children, he ultimately chose to forego that good in pursuit of a higher calling to the priesthood. Australia has been facing a shortage of Catholic priests in recent years. According to 2024 data from the National Centre for Pastoral Research, 3,017 clergy currently serve Australia's Catholic population of over 5 million. Reports indicate a 25% decline in the number of priests since 1971, alongside a steady decrease in both Catholic population and average mass attendance. A 2023 report by The Australian revealed that the median age of Catholic priests in the country is 63. At a time when the Catholic faith in Australia faces multiple challenges, BJ Perrott's decision to take the road less travelled is a sign of hope and renewal for the church.
Thousands, including politicians, religious leaders, and pro-life activists, gathered at the 7th annual Virginia March for Life to advocate for the rights of the unborn. Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears served as the keynote speaker at the event, which featured prayers and speeches in support for the cause. This year's march was especially significant as lawmakers moved forward with efforts to enshrine abortion rights in Virginia's Constitution year.
About 2,000 people gathered for the 7th annual Virginia March for Life, one of the largest anti-abortion demonstrations in the state. Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears was a keynote speaker for the annual event that took place on April 2nd. Family Foundation President Victoria Cobb, who also spoke at the gathering, said that the ongoing process to enshrine abortion protections into Virginia's constitution was barbaric. Following prayers and speeches by religious leaders, Northern Virginia resident and pro-life advocate Shaunt Mallory emphasized that help and resources were available to women having been through a crisis pregnancy herself. On a similar note, Dolores Oates shared how an unexpected pregnancy turned out to be an incredible blessing in the form of a now adult son. Virginia lawmakers took a major step in February of this year toward enshrining reproductive rights by passing a resolution to amend the Constitution in the General Assembly. However, to move the legislative process to the next stage, the resolution must pass the General Assembly again in 2026 before ultimately appearing on the ballot for voters to approve in November 2026. Under current Virginia law, adults can seek an abortion for any reason through the second trimester but require approval from 3 physicians after that. The proposed amendment would reduce the 3-physician requirement to 1 and introduce a legal standard for any abortion restrictions. If enshrined in Virginia's constitution, abortion access and other reproductive rights would become far more resistant to legislative shifts.
The Iberian province of the Descalzed Carmelites unveiled a forensic facial reconstruction of Saint Teresa of Avila at age 50 on the 510th anniversary of the saint's birth. Created by forensic sculptor Jennifer Mann using anthropometric data, X-rays and historical descriptions, the terracotta bust is believed to be the most accurate representation of her appearance. The unveiling precedes the public exhibition of her relics following a scientific investigation that confirmed the extraordinary preservation of her remains.
On the 510th anniversary of the birth of Saint Teresa of Avila, the Iberian province of the Order of the Descalzed Carmelites unveiled a terracotta bust of the saint at the age of 50. The facial reconstruction was carried out by forensic sculptor Jennifer Mann of the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine in Australia. Mann combined forensic methodologies currently used in the United States and the United Kingdom. The University of Chieri provided the anthropometric data and X-rays required for the process. She also drew inspiration from a portrait of the saint by Juan de la Miseria, a Descalzed Carmelite friar, as well as a description by Mother Mary of St. Joseph, a contemporary nun. According to her testimony, Saint Teresa of Avila was of medium height and remained beautiful even in her later years. She described her face as extraordinary, neither round nor aquiline. The bust, according to Mann, may be the most accurate representation of what Saint Teresa of Jesus truly looked like during her lifetime. During the presentation of the bust at the Basilica of the Annunciation in Alba de Tormes, Father Miguel Angel Gonzalez, prior of Alba de Tormes and Salamanca, described it as a reflection of the soul of Saint Teresa of Jesus, a bearer effigies that unite science and mysticism. The unveiling of the reconstructed face of the 16th century mystic comes ahead of the public exhibition of her mortal remains from May 11th to 25th. Her tomb was reopened last September for the first time in 110 years. At the time, a team of scientists led by Italian anthropology professor Luigi Capasso found her body to be in extraordinary condition. Recently, they presented a 53-page preliminary analysis of the saint's remains, confirming the initial findings and offering further insights into their condition. After the public veneration, her relics will be returned to their definitive resting place at the Carmelite Monastery of Alba de Tormes, concluding the 9-month-long investigation process.
A female fencer, Stephanie Turner, was disqualified from her tournament after protesting by taking a knee and refusing to compete against a transgender opponent at the Cherry Blossom tournament at the University of Maryland. During the Division 1A women's foil event, Turner took a knee and removed her mask as an act of protest. In response, she was issued a black card, immediately expelled from the competition, and suspended for the rest of the event. USA fencer Stephanie Turner was disqualified from her tournament after taking a knee and refusing to compete against a transgender opponent, Redmond Sullivan, at the Cherry Blossom tournament at the University of Maryland. Turner took a knee and removed her mask in protest during the Division 1A women's foil event. In response to the protest, she was issued a black card, which means she was immediately expelled from the competition and suspended for the rest of the event. Turner came to the decision the night before the event when she checked the competition pools and saw that she would be competing against Sullivan. She made the public protest as she wanted the world to see her refusal. Turner stated that she knew she had to do that because the USA fencing had not been listening to women's objections regarding its gender eligibility policy. When Turner took a knee, Sullivan initially believed that she was preparing to begin the match. Turner then looked at the referee and said that she cannot do this as she is a woman and her opponent is a man, and this is a women's tournament. She will not compete against this individual. Sullivan responded that there is a policy that recognizes Sullivan as a woman. So later, the referees dealt Turner a black card, which represents the more severe penalty, leading to expulsion from the tournament for serious rule infractions or unsportsmanlike behavior. Turner was then escorted to the bout committee, where she had to explain what she did. She was then handed a copy of the association's transgender policy and made her sign a document acknowledging the black card. The USA Fencing released a statement claiming that the current transgender and non-binary athlete policy was designed to expand access to the sport of fencing and create inclusive, safe spaces. The policy is based on the principle that everyone should have the ability to participate in sports and based upon the research available of the day. The spokesperson further stated that Turner was not penalized for her stance against trans inclusion, but simply to refusing for fence. Support for Turner is flooding in on social media for standing up for her rights. Riley Gaines, a former competitive swimmer at the University of Kentucky and a prominent advocate against the inclusion of transgender athletes in women's sports following the 2022 NCAA women's swimming competitions, expressed her support for Turner through Platform X. That's all for today. Until we meet again, God bless and thank you.